In July of 2019, in June of 2019, I was approached through a proxy by somebody who had concerns about sovereign matters. They relayed a message to me that Chinese police were operating inside Vanuatu territory with the intention of arresting and deporting some Chinese nationals. In the course of that, it was a very preliminary discussion, but subsequent to that, I was informed from the same source, working through a proxy again, that the plane had departed, basically, that there were, Chinese law enforcement staff in Port Vila at the time, and shortly after that, through other sources within the local law enforcement community, we were able to ascertain that a raid had occurred, that arrests had been made, and that 6 people were being held. It subsequently transpired that these people were being held without access to legal counsel, that they were denied due process, and that 4 of them had been granted Vanuatu citizenship under the Citizenship by Investment program. Those citizenships were revoked without following the process that was prescribed by law. So we raised all of these concerns and followed the matter quite closely, as you can imagine. We did try to contact the 6 detainees and to speak with the law enforcement who were actually working on the case itself. The story itself was reported on a collaborative basis by myself and other staff members at the Vanuatu Daily Post. And it was a result of numerous sources feeding to us. Probably the most amusing moment was the biggest get that we had out of the whole thing was exclusive video and images that we managed to obtain of these 6 Chinese nationals being taken across the tarmac and onto a chartered plane that later flew back to China. And we wouldn't have got those images, we wouldn't have known they were being transported that day if it hadn't been for the fact that they moved the detainees. They were being held at a hotel, and we reported that they were being held at a hotel. We didn't know which hotel they were being held at. However, subsequent to that, they were moved to a local corporate compound that belonged to the Chinese Civil Engineering and Construction Corporation. And it was when I went out to verify their presence there that I discovered they were gone. They had already left. And so that's how we knew to scurry down to the airport and start to talk to people there. And eventually, as I said, we obtained video and still images of the people being transported. This was, as you can imagine, it was a high-profile case. It was one that it caused a great deal of discomfort, not only for the government of Vanuatu, but for the government of China as well. Subsequent to that, I was called to the carpet by the Prime Minister himself. He came and he summoned me and in very angry terms suggested to me that if I didn't like it in Vanuatu, I could go home. My response to him was that Vanuatu is my home. I'm married to a Ni Vanuatu. We have 2 lovely little daughters, and this is where I've chosen to make my life. After that, things went quiet for a bit. And it was only in September of that year, at the end of September, when I was due to renew my work permit, that I discovered that things were still moving. The Commissioner of Labor refused to renew my work permit, stating that I hadn't done the training that I was required to do. That's patently false, and that matter is before the court. So I won't take it any further than that, except to say that I'm very confident of what the outcome will be. Subsequent to that, as Samasoni said, I attended the Melanesian Media Freedom Forum in Brisbane. I had to leave the country anyway because my visa was set to expire. My intention was to return as a visitor and then to sort my immigration issues out. I was instructed by my lawyer that there was nothing stopping me from following that course of action. However, when I presented myself at the airport, I was instructed by the airline that they wouldn't allow me to board because the Department of Immigration had issued an instruction to them threatening fines if I were brought into the country. That was put under judicial review. And several weeks later, it was about 6 weeks later, I was finally allowed to return home. I didn't receive my visitor's visa until 9 months later. And just last week, I received a residence visa. So for the first time in 16 months, I actually have some degree of confidence about where I'm going to be sleeping tomorrow. It's been a very difficult time. I have been unable to work for the Daily Post for obvious reasons, because that legal process is still underway. I've been living off my savings. I have depleted them entirely. And I have made a little bit of work. I made a little bit of money as a freelance reporter, but I've been extremely circumscribed about the kind of reporting that I can do for fear of further bureaucratic measures being brought to bear, just being used on a punitive basis. While succeeding, a succession of governments have insisted on the fact that there was no relation between my treatment by immigration and labor and my reporting on the stories, I think it's noteworthy that it was the minister himself who called a press conference and proceeded to denigrate my character in front of the assembled media. It's been a really difficult time, and it's really highlighted for people how much risk is involved in blowing the whistle on high stakes news stories such as the one I reported on. My job is to front up to these kind of stories. I'm the person who puts his name onto the stories so that others do not have to. Nonetheless, I think that the result of this episode has been that the culture of fear has spread certainly throughout the expatriate community, and to a large degree within the public service in Vanuatu. Sourcing stories now is more difficult than it's ever been. So if we were to judge the effectiveness of the government's actions to suppress the kind of reporting that they saw from the Daily Post, it saddens me to say that they've been quite effective. They've achieved to some degree the effect that they were designed to have. It's very difficult to fight these things, and I'm conscious of the fact that Vanuatu is actually one of the easier places to work in the South Pacific. There are many other jurisdictions where the pressures are much more direct, and in some cases are physical pressures that we have to worry about our safety as much as anything else. That's not something that I've been concerned about, though people have warned me. I've never felt that there was any kind of imminent risk. So I guess if I had to draw a moral from this episode, I'd say that I think it's harder to be a whistleblower now than it ever has been. with the amount of scrutiny and the digital trail that's left behind. And yet we have to find a way to respond to the kind of measures that we're subjected to when the story has to come out. I believe that a lot of that will come out of collaboration between journalists. If we recognize that we're buddies in bad times, that we are, if we allow ourselves to be singled out, we will be picked off one by one. If we stand together, there's a chance that most of us will get through this. And if we bear that in mind, then I think we can come out of the place that we're in. If we don't, if we allow fear to control our actions and to dictate the kind of stories that we report, then I have significant fears for the future of democracy in the Pacific Islands.